Hello, and thank you for joining me on this journey. Tonight, we will slowly drift into the story of humanity's first steps into cultivation, tracing how from wild seeds, the foundations of modern fields were born. Imagine the soft rustle of tall grasses in the Fertile Crescent, where early humans first explored planting grains and pulses. Picture the careful hands tending small plots of earth, feeling the warm soil, and watching tiny seedlings unfurl toward the morning sun. Hear the subtle sounds of rivers flowing nearby, carrying water that would shape irrigation channels and nourish these early crops. Visualize the gentle movement of domesticated animals grazing, their presence transforming both diet and daily life. As we wander through these ancient landscapes, sense how the rhythm of planting and harvest guided the birth of permanent settlements, weaving together communities and sparking innovations that would ripple through generations. If you enjoy these relaxing moments, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, and turning on all notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos. But for now, just breathe. Let your body relax, release any tension, and allow your mind to drift. Let's begin. Long before fields were etched into the land, before pathways traced the movement of villages and boundaries marked ownership, human lives unfolded in motion. Small groups drifted across vast terrain, guided by seasonal rhythms, animal migrations, and the subtle signs of ripening plants. The land was not yet shaped by deliberate design, but observed with careful attention. Each berry cluster, each wild grain, each root hidden beneath layers of earth became part of a growing awareness. An unspoken understanding that nature offered patterns waiting to be recognized. In the region now known as the Fertile Crescent, dawn light spread across gentle river valleys, illuminating dense patches of wild wheat and barley. These grasses, swaying softly beneath the early sun, held more than nourishment. They carried potential. For countless generations, humans gathered their seeds, noticing which stalks yielded more grain, which resisted harsh winds, which returned year after year in familiar places. Over time, observation deepened into intention. It began almost imperceptibly. A handful of seeds scattered near a temporary camp, a patch of ground cleared of competing plants. Perhaps it was curiosity, or perhaps necessity during a season when wild food grew scarce. Whatever the cause, these small acts marked a quiet turning point in human history. Seeds placed into soil became an experiment, one that would unfold slowly across generations. The earth responded in its own measured way. Rain softened the ground, sunlight coaxed growth, and in time, green shoots emerged where human hands had intervened. There was no certainty in these early attempts, only patience. Yet with each cycle, knowledge accumulated. The timing of planting began to align with seasonal rains. The best locations, near rivers in fertile sediment, were chosen with care. Gradually, the unpredictable nature of gathering began to give way to something more stable. Lentils, too, entered this quiet transformation. Their small, unassuming seeds offered reliable nourishment, easy to store and rich in sustenance. Alongside wheat and barley, they formed the foundation of early cultivation. Together, these crops reshaped not only diets, but daily rhythms. Where once entire groups moved continuously, there was now reason to remain, to watch over planted ground, to wait for growth and return. Tools emerged as extensions of this new relationship. Simple digging sticks pressed into soil, loosening it just enough to receive seeds. Stone blades harvested ripened grain, their edges worn smooth through repeated use. These implements were not yet refined, but they reflected a growing connection between human intention and the land beneath their feet. As seasons passed, the landscape itself began to change. Areas once dominated by wild growth slowly transformed into early fields. The boundary between natural and tended blurred, creating spaces shaped by both environment and human care. These spaces held promise, but also responsibility. Crops required attention, protection from animals, careful timing, and knowledge passed from one generation to the next. With this shift came subtle changes in human life. Time was no longer measured only by movement and immediate need, but by cycles of planting and harvest. Days gained structure. Waiting became part of survival. The act of sowing carried hope, while harvest brought both relief and preparation for the seasons ahead. In these early moments of cultivation, something profound began to take root. Humans were no longer only participants in the natural world. They were shaping it, gently guiding its outcomes. The relationship remained delicate, influenced by weather, soil, and chance, yet it marked the beginning of a lasting transformation. The rising sun over those ancient fields illuminated more than rippling grain. It revealed a future in formation, a gradual shift from wandering to dwelling, from gathering to growing. And within that shift, the first threads of settled life quietly began to weave themselves into the fabric of human existence. Across the same fertile valleys where early cultivation first emerged, a deeper transformation began to unfold, one that extended beyond planting seeds into the careful shaping of life itself. Human communities, no longer entirely transient, started to notice patterns, not only in plants, but in animals that moved alongside them. Herds grazed near settlements, drawn by water and vegetation, creating opportunities for closer observation and gradual interaction. At first, the relationship between humans and animals remained distant. Wild sheep and goats roamed hillsides, alert and swift, their instincts finely tuned to avoid danger. Yet, over time, certain individuals displayed traits that made proximity more possible. Some were less aggressive, more tolerant of human presence, or slower to flee. These subtle differences did not go unnoticed. Gradually, people began to favor these animals, guiding them, protecting them, and, in doing so, influencing which traits would persist. Meanwhile, in cultivated fields, similar patterns of selection were taking shape. Among wild grasses, certain stalks held seeds more firmly, preventing them from scattering too early. Others grew larger grains or matured more predictably. By collecting and replanting these preferred seeds, early farmers unknowingly guided the genetic future of crops such as wheat and barley. This was not an immediate transformation, but a slow accumulation of changes, each generation carrying forward traits that better served human needs. The domestication of plants brought visible differences over time. Grains became larger and more uniform. Harvesting grew more efficient as seeds remained attached to their stalks until gathered. Lentils and other legumes, valued for their nutritional richness, were also selected for traits that made them easier to grow and store. These developments strengthened food reliability, reducing the uncertainty that had long defined human survival. Animals, too, underwent gradual change. Sheep and goats, among the earliest domesticated species, adapted to life under human care. Their behavior shifted across generations, becoming more manageable and less reactive. Physical traits also evolved, influenced by selective breeding and controlled environments. Wool became thicker in sheep, providing a new resource beyond meat. Goats offered milk, expanding dietary possibilities and contributing to a more varied and stable food supply. With these changes came a new form of interdependence. Humans provided protection from predators, access to water, and managed grazing areas. In return, animals offered sustenance, materials, and labor. This relationship required attentiveness and knowledge, an understanding of breeding cycles, feeding needs, and seasonal movement. Communities began to organize their lives around these responsibilities, weaving animal care into daily routines. Beyond immediate survival, domestication began to shape broader aspects of human society. Reliable food sources allowed populations to grow, and with that growth came the need for more structured living arrangements. Families remained in one place for longer periods, tending both crops and livestock. This stability fostered deeper connections to specific landscapes, transforming temporary camps into enduring settlements. Geography played a crucial role in how domestication unfolded. In the Fertile Crescent, the availability of suitable plant species and herd animals made this region a focal point for early agricultural development. Elsewhere, similar patterns emerged independently as communities in different parts of Asia and Africa began domesticating local species adapted to their environments. Each region developed its own balance between cultivation and animal husbandry, shaped by climate, terrain, and available resources. Scientific study reveals that these early choices left lasting marks on both human and animal biology. Genetic changes in domesticated species can still be traced today, reflecting thousands of years of selective breeding. Human populations also adapted, developing traits such as lactose tolerance in regions where dairy became a dietary staple. These biological shifts highlight the depth of the relationship between humans and the life forms they nurtured. As fields expanded and herds grew, the landscape itself began to reflect this partnership. Open grazing areas replaced dense vegetation in some regions, while cultivated land spread outward from settlements. The environment was no longer only a backdrop to human activity. It became something shaped through deliberate action, guided by accumulated knowledge and shared experience. Through patience and careful attention, early communities transformed wild species into dependable companions. Plants and animals alike became part of a shared existence, one that supported growth, stability, and the gradual emergence of more complex societies. What began as observation had evolved into stewardship, marking another step in humanity's enduring connection with the living world. With fields now yielding predictable harvests and herds moving under human guidance, a profound shift in daily existence began to take hold. Groups that once followed seasonal abundance found reason to remain in place, returning not out of necessity, but by intention. Over time, repeated habitation left marks upon the land, flattened earth, scattered tools, and the earliest foundations of permanent dwellings. At the edges of cultivated land, simple shelters evolved into structured homes. Mud brick walls rose from packed soil, shaped by hand and hardened under the sun. Roofs of reeds and timber provided cover, while interior spaces became defined by purpose, areas for sleeping, storage, and food preparation. These early houses, modest in scale, signaled a deeper transformation, a commitment to place, reinforced with each passing season. Nearby, shared spaces began to emerge. Storage pits lined with clay preserved harvested grain, protecting it from moisture and pests. Over time, these evolved into communal granaries, where surplus could be gathered and distributed. Such arrangements required cooperation and trust, encouraging new forms of social organization. Decisions about planting, harvesting, and resource allocation were no longer individual matters, but collective concerns. Along narrow pathways between dwellings, daily life unfolded with increasing regularity. The rhythms of agriculture shaped each moment, planting in one season, tending in another, harvesting at the height of growth. These cycles brought structure to time, creating a shared calendar rooted in observation of the natural world. Knowledge of rainfall patterns, soil conditions, and seasonal change became essential, passed from one generation to the next through experience and instruction. Population growth followed naturally from improved food stability. As more children survived into adulthood, settlements expanded outward. New homes clustered around existing ones, forming early villages defined not by strict boundaries, but by proximity and shared activity. Within these growing communities, roles began to diversify. While many continued to work the land, others specialized in crafting tools, shaping pottery, or managing stored goods. Evidence from archaeological sites reveals that such specialization marked the beginnings of social complexity. Distinctions in skill and responsibility gradually translated into differences in status. Some individuals assumed leadership roles, coordinating labor or mediating disputes. Though these early forms of governance remained informal, they laid the groundwork for more structured systems that would emerge in later societies. Trade also began to extend beyond the boundaries of a single village. Surplus grain, crafted goods, and raw materials moved along emerging networks, linking distant communities. Stones for tools, shells for ornamentation, and pigments for decoration traveled across regions, suggesting not only exchange, but communication of ideas. These connections broadened human experience, fostering innovation and cultural development. Ritual and tradition became intertwined with agricultural life. Seasonal events, such as planting and harvest, carried significance beyond sustenance. Gatherings marked these transitions, reinforcing social bonds and shared identity. Symbols of fertility and renewal appeared in early art, etched into pottery or carved into simple figurines. These expressions reflected an evolving understanding of humanity's connection to the land and the cycles that sustained it. Within village boundaries, cooperation remained essential. Irrigation channels required maintenance, fields demanded coordinated effort, and herds needed supervision. Shared labor strengthened communal ties, while collective challenges, such as drought or poor harvests, tested resilience. Through these experiences, communities developed strategies for survival that extended beyond individual capability. The physical layout of early villages reflected both practicality and adaptation. Homes clustered for protection and convenience, while fields stretched outward into surrounding terrain. Pathways connected key areas, guiding movement between living spaces, storage sites, and cultivated land. Over time, these patterns became more defined, shaping the structure of settlements that would continue to evolve. Gradually, the relationship between humans and their environment deepened further. Land was no longer simply inhabited. It was organized, managed, and transformed through sustained effort. Each furrow in the soil, each constructed wall, represented a step toward permanence. Villages became enduring centers of life, where knowledge accumulated and traditions took root. From these early foundations, the framework of society began to emerge. Cooperation, specialization, and shared purpose intertwined, forming a complex network of relationships that extended beyond immediate survival. The rise of villages marked a turning point, not only in how humans lived, but in how they understood their place within the world. A place now shaped as much by human hands as by nature itself. Beneath the steady rhythm of expanding villages, another transformation unfolded. One driven not by seeds or animals, but by the ingenuity of human hands. As agricultural life became more established, the limitations of simple methods grew increasingly apparent. Soil needed to be turned more effectively, crops harvested with greater efficiency, and resources stored with care. In response, tools evolved, gradually extending human capability and reshaping the interaction between people and land. At first, implements remained basic in form. Digging sticks, hardened by fire or carved from dense wood, allowed early farmers to break the surface of the soil with greater precision than bare hands. These tools made it possible to plant seeds at consistent depths, improving germination and crop reliability. Over time, their design improved, sometimes fitted with stone tips that enhanced durability and effectiveness. From these humble beginnings emerged more specialized instruments. Stone sickles, crafted with carefully shaped blades, enabled efficient harvesting of cereal crops. Their edges, often lined with sharp flint inserts, sliced through stalks with relative ease. Repeated use left a distinctive polish on the stone, a subtle record of countless harvests carried out under changing skies. These tools reduced the time and labor required to gather crops, allowing communities to manage larger fields. As settlements expanded, the need for storage and preservation grew equally important. Pottery became a critical innovation, providing containers that protected grains and legumes from moisture, pests, and decay. Early vessels, shaped by hand and hardened through controlled firing, varied in size and form depending on their use. Some were designed for cooking, others for long-term storage. Their development marked a significant advancement in managing surplus, supporting population growth and stability. Gradually, attention turned toward improving the cultivation of larger areas. The introduction of the ARD, an early form of plough, represented a major shift in agricultural practice. Pulled by human effort at first and later by domesticated animals such as oxen, this tool carved shallow furrows into the soil. By loosening the earth across wider stretches of land, it increased planting efficiency and improved water absorption. Fields that once required intensive manual labor could now be prepared more quickly, supporting greater yields. Animal power brought further transformation. Oxen, with their strength and endurance, became essential partners in farming. Harnessed to ploughs, they enabled deeper tilling, which enhanced soil aeration and nutrient distribution. This advancement not only increased productivity, but also allowed cultivation in heavier soils that had previously been difficult to manage. The partnership between humans and animals extended beyond food production, becoming integral to the mechanics of agriculture itself. Water management technologies also began to take form alongside these tools. Simple irrigation channels, dug with basic implements, directed river water toward fields. Though modest in scale, these systems required careful planning and maintenance. Tools for digging and shaping earth played a central role in their construction, linking technological innovation to environmental adaptation. Metallurgy introduced yet another layer of refinement. The transition from stone to metal tools, particularly those made from copper and later bronze, improved durability and cutting efficiency. Metal blades retained sharpness longer and could be shaped into more precise forms. This allowed for the creation of advanced implements, including improved sickles and axes, which supported both agriculture and construction. With each innovation, labor became more organized. Tasks could be divided more effectively, with some individuals focusing on tool production while others worked the fields. Knowledge of tool-making techniques spread within and between communities, fostering a culture of shared expertise and incremental improvement. The landscape itself bore the marks of these advancements. Fields expanded in size and number, their boundaries defined by repeated cultivation. Irrigation systems altered the flow of water across valleys, while storage facilities grew in capacity and complexity. These changes reflected a deeper understanding of how to manipulate natural conditions to support human needs. Through these evolving technologies, farming became more than an act of survival. It developed into a structured interaction with the environment, guided by observation, experimentation, and adaptation. Each tool carried within it a story of necessity and invention, linking human creativity to the enduring challenge of sustaining life from the soil. Beyond the fertile valleys where cultivation first took root, the knowledge of farming began to travel with migrating communities, carried across vast distances over generations. Movement was no longer defined solely by the search for wild resources. Instead, people brought seeds, animals, and techniques with them, adapting familiar practices to unfamiliar landscapes. This gradual expansion marked the beginning of agriculture as a global phenomenon. Across Anatolia and into Europe, early farmers introduced wheat and barley to new environments shaped by cooler climates and varied terrain. Forests were cleared to create arable land, and soils were tested through trial and experience. Each region required adjustment. Timing of planting shifted, and crop varieties were selected for resilience against local conditions. Over time, these adaptations led to distinct agricultural traditions, reflecting both inherited knowledge and environmental constraints. Further east, in river valleys of Asia, rice cultivation emerged as a defining innovation. Unlike dry field grains, rice thrived in flooded conditions, leading to the development of wet field farming systems. Terraced landscapes began to appear along hillsides, carefully engineered to retain water and prevent soil erosion. These terraces, built through sustained effort, transformed steep terrain into productive farmland, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of land management. Meanwhile, in the African continent, agriculture evolved in parallel yet distinct ways. Sorghum and millet became staple crops in regions where rainfall patterns differed significantly from those of the Fertile Crescent. These grains, well suited to arid and semi-arid environments, supported communities across vast savannas. Pastoralism also played a central role, with herding strategies adapted to seasonal movement, balancing grazing needs with environmental limits. Across the Atlantic, entirely separate agricultural systems developed in the Americas. Maize, first domesticated in Mesoamerica, became a cornerstone of life for many societies. Its versatility allowed it to be grown in diverse climates, from lowland tropics to highland regions. Alongside maize, crops such as beans and squash formed complementary planting systems, often cultivated together in ways that enhanced soil fertility and nutritional balance. This method, sometimes referred to as intercropping, reflected a deep understanding of ecological relationships. As agriculture spread, it reshaped not only diets, but entire ecosystems. Forests gave way to fields, wetlands were redirected, and native plant communities were altered. These changes, while supporting human populations, also introduced new challenges: soil depletion, water management issues, and shifting biodiversity required ongoing adaptation. Farmers responded with techniques such as crop rotation and fallowing, allowing land to recover between planting cycles. Trade networks played a crucial role in this expansion. Seeds, tools, and agricultural knowledge moved along routes connecting distant regions. Exchanges were not limited to goods. Ideas about cultivation, storage, and land use spread alongside them. This interconnectedness fostered innovation as communities learned from one another and refined their practices. Cultural identity became closely tied to agriculture in each region. Crops held symbolic meaning, influencing traditions, rituals, and social structures. Rice terraces in Asia, grain fields in Europe, and maize cultivation in the Americas each represented more than sustenance. They embodied ways of life shaped by environment and history. Through migration and adaptation, agriculture became a shared thread, linking diverse human experiences. Despite differences in climate, geography, and culture, the act of cultivating land created common ground across continents. Seeds carried by early farmers not only sustained communities, but also connected them, forming a network of knowledge and practice that continues to influence the world today. Along the margins of rivers that swelled and receded with seasonal rhythms, early farming communities confronted a persistent challenge. Water arrived in abundance at certain times, yet vanished when crops needed it most. This uneven distribution demanded innovation. Rather than waiting for natural flooding, people began guiding water across the land, shaping its movement with intention and care. In the alluvial plains of Mesopotamia, some of the earliest irrigation systems took form. Shallow channels were carved into soft sediment, directing river water toward cultivated fields. These channels, though simple in appearance, required careful alignment with the natural slope of the land. Too steep, and water would rush past without soaking into the soil. Too flat, and it would stagnate. Achieving balance demanded observation, adjustment, and shared effort within growing communities. Gradually, these systems expanded in scale and complexity. Networks of canals branched outward from main waterways, reaching fields located far from the riverbanks. Earthen embankments were constructed to contain and guide the flow, while small gates or barriers allowed farmers to control when and where water entered specific plots. Such control transformed agriculture, making it possible to cultivate crops in regions that would otherwise remain dry and unproductive. Elsewhere, similar innovations emerged independently. Along the Nile, annual floods deposited nutrient-rich silt across surrounding land. Farmers learned to complement this natural cycle with basin irrigation, creating enclosed areas that retained water long enough for crops to absorb moisture before it slowly drained away. This method aligned closely with the river's rhythm, blending human intervention with predictable environmental patterns. In the Indus Valley, evidence reveals carefully planned irrigation channels integrated into urban and rural landscapes. These systems supported extensive agricultural production, sustaining densely populated settlements. Their construction reflects an advanced understanding of hydrology, soil behavior, and seasonal variation, all achieved without modern instruments. Moving eastward, rice cultivation introduced new forms of water management. Flooded paddies required consistent water levels, maintained through intricate systems of terraces and channels. Hillsides were reshaped into stepped platforms, each retaining a controlled layer of water. This approach minimized erosion while maximizing usable land, demonstrating how irrigation could transform even challenging terrain into productive farmland. The ecological effects of irrigation extended beyond immediate crop growth. Soils enriched by controlled water flow often became more fertile, supporting repeated cultivation. At the same time, improper drainage could lead to salinization, where salts accumulated in the soil, reducing its productivity. Early farmers encountered these challenges and adapted through techniques such as rotating fields or modifying water distribution patterns. Labor organization became increasingly important as irrigation systems grew. Maintaining canals, clearing sediment, and repairing embankments required coordinated effort. Communities developed systems of cooperation, assigning responsibilities and establishing schedules to ensure that water reached all fields fairly. These arrangements reinforced social bonds, while also introducing new forms of governance tied directly to resource management. Landscapes gradually transformed under the influence of irrigation. Areas once defined by natural vegetation were reshaped into networks of fields and waterways. The presence of controlled water altered local ecosystems, influencing plant diversity and attracting animals to newly created habitats. Human activity became a defining force in these environments, guiding both biological and physical change. Technological refinement continued over generations. Tools for digging and shaping earth improved, allowing for more precise construction of channels and barriers. Knowledge of water behavior, how it moved, pooled, and evaporated, deepened through experience, becoming an essential part of agricultural expertise. Through the development of irrigation, water shifted from an unpredictable element to a managed resource. This transformation allowed agriculture to expand beyond the limits imposed by rainfall alone, supporting larger populations and more stable settlements. The careful redirection of rivers and streams marked a significant step in humanity's ability to influence the environment, forging a lasting connection between water, land, and the growth of civilization. Within the steady rhythm of cultivated fields, a more subtle transformation unfolded inside the human body. As reliance on agriculture deepened, daily nourishment shifted from diverse wild sources to diets centered on cereals, legumes, and domesticated animal products. This change, gradual yet far-reaching, influenced human biology in ways that can still be traced through scientific study. Early hunter-gatherer diets had been varied, including fruits, nuts, wild plants, and game, providing a broad spectrum of nutrients. With the rise of farming, however, staple crops such as wheat, barley, rice, and maize became dominant sources of energy. These grains offered reliable calories, supporting population growth, yet they also narrowed the range of nutrients consumed. the balance between abundance and diversity began to shift. Skeletal evidence from ancient populations reveals measurable effects of this dietary transition. Average stature in some early farming communities declined compared to their foraging predecessors, likely due to reduced protein intake and increased reliance on carbohydrates. Bone density also showed variation, reflecting differences in physical activity and nutrition. These findings illustrate how food choices shaped physical development across generations. Teeth provide another record of dietary change. Increased consumption of starchy grains led to higher rates of dental caries, as carbohydrates promoted bacterial activity in the mouth. At the same time, reduced reliance on tough, fibrous foods resulted in less tooth wear, altering jaw structure over time. These subtle anatomical shifts reveal how agriculture influenced even the smallest aspects of human physiology. Beyond visible traits, internal adaptations also emerged. In populations that incorporated dairy from domesticated animals, genetic changes allowed some individuals to digest lactose into adulthood. This trait, known as lactase persistence, became more common in regions where milk was a regular part of the diet. Such adaptations demonstrate the dynamic relationship between cultural practices and human genetics. Iron deficiency appears in archaeological records as well, particularly in societies heavily dependent on cereal crops with limited access to diverse nutrients. This condition, often linked to anemia, reflects the challenges of maintaining balanced nutrition within early agricultural systems. Communities responded over time by incorporating legumes, animal products, and varied crops to improve dietary quality. Within settlements, food preparation evolved alongside agricultural production. Grinding stones transformed grains into flour, enabling the creation of bread and porridge. Cooking techniques improved digestibility and allowed for more efficient use of available resources. These culinary developments not only enhanced nutrition, but also contributed to social life, as shared meals became central to daily routines. Cultural practices surrounding food began to take shape, embedding agriculture into identity and tradition. Seasonal harvests were marked by gatherings, where communities came together to prepare and consume the fruits of their labor. These events reinforced social cohesion while reflecting the importance of food beyond mere sustenance. Microbial life within the human gut also responded to dietary changes. Increased consumption of cultivated plants influenced the composition of gut bacteria, affecting digestion and overall health. Modern research continues to explore these connections, revealing how ancient dietary shifts continue to shape human biology. From the first cultivated grains to the development of diverse agricultural diets, food became a driving force in human evolution. The body adapted alongside the landscape, reflecting the choices made in fields and kitchens alike. Through nourishment, agriculture shaped not only societies, but the very structure and function of those who depended upon it. As harvests grew more dependable, a new condition emerged within early agricultural communities: surplus. Fields that once produced only what was needed for immediate survival began to yield more than families could consume. This excess, carefully stored in granaries and vessels, created opportunities that extended far beyond sustenance, reshaping the structure of society in lasting ways. With reliable reserves of grain and other goods, not every individual needed to focus on food production. Some members of these communities began to devote their time to specialized skills. Craftspeople shaped pottery, wove textiles, and fashioned tools with increasing refinement. Others took on roles related to coordination and organization, overseeing storage, distribution, and labor. This diversification marked a shift from purely subsistence-based living toward more complex economic systems. Along emerging pathways between settlements, exchange became more frequent and structured. Surplus goods were traded for materials unavailable locally, such as stone for tools, metals, or decorative items like shells and pigments. These exchanges connected distant regions, forming early trade networks that carried both physical goods and cultural ideas. Over time, certain routes became well established, linking communities across valleys, plains, and river systems. Within these growing networks, value began to take on new meaning. Goods were no longer measured solely by their immediate usefulness, but also by their desirability and rarity. This shift encouraged the development of systems for assessing worth, laying the groundwork for more formalized economic practices. Barter remained central, yet it evolved into increasingly sophisticated forms of exchange. As resources accumulated, differences in wealth and access began to appear. Some households controlled larger stores of grain or possessed more livestock, granting them greater influence within the community. These disparities contributed to the formation of social hierarchies, where status was linked to resource control, skill, or leadership roles. Archaeological evidence, such as variations in burial goods and housing structures, reflects these emerging distinctions. Governance structures developed alongside these changes. Coordinating the storage and distribution of surplus required oversight, leading to the rise of early administrative roles. Leaders or councils may have managed communal resources, organized labor for large-scale tasks, and resolved conflicts. These early forms of authority were often closely tied to agricultural success, as control over food supplies carried significant power. Markets began to take shape as focal points of exchange. In these spaces, individuals gathered to trade goods, share information, and reinforce social connections. The movement of goods through these centers contributed to cultural exchange, spreading technologies, artistic styles, and agricultural knowledge across regions. Such interactions enriched societies while also increasing their interdependence. At the same time, the presence of surplus introduced new challenges. Storage required protection from spoilage, pests, and theft, leading to innovations in preservation and security. Inequality, though gradual in its emergence, influenced social dynamics, sometimes creating tension between groups with differing levels of access to resources. These complexities reflected the evolving nature of human communities as they adapted to abundance. Cultural life expanded in response to these developments. With more time available beyond food production, artistic and intellectual pursuits gained prominence. Decorative objects, ceremonial items, and early forms of record-keeping began to appear, suggesting a growing interest in identity, memory, and expression. These elements added depth to societal structure, linking material wealth with cultural richness. Through the accumulation and exchange of surplus, agriculture became a driving force behind economic and social transformation. The relationships between individuals, communities, and resources grew more intricate, setting the stage for the development of cities, states, and enduring civilizations shaped by both cooperation and competition. Across early farming societies, the steady return of planting and harvest shaped more than subsistence. It influenced how people understood existence itself. Seasonal cycles, marked by growth and decline, became deeply embedded in cultural expression, offering a framework through which communities interpreted time, renewal, and the forces that governed their world. In many regions, the emergence of agriculture coincided with the development of symbolic systems tied to fertility and abundance. Seeds placed into the earth and later emerging as crops inspired parallels with life, death, and rebirth. These ideas found form in early figurines, carvings, and painted surfaces, where recurring motifs of plants, animals, and human forms suggested a shared language of meaning, rooted in cultivation. Ritual practices often aligned with key agricultural moments. Planting seasons brought acts intended to encourage successful growth, while harvest periods inspired gatherings centered on gratitude and preservation. These events reinforced collective identity, linking individuals to both their community and the land that sustained them. Repeated across generations, such traditions became foundational elements of cultural continuity. In river valley civilizations, agricultural cycles influence the development of calendars. Observations of seasonal changes, such as flooding patterns or shifts in daylight, allowed communities to predict optimal times for sowing and reaping. These early timekeeping systems were not only practical, but also carried spiritual significance, connecting celestial movements with earthly events. The alignment of human activity with natural rhythms reflected an effort to maintain balance within a changing environment. Mythological narratives frequently drew upon agricultural themes. Stories of deities associated with crops, weather, and soil conditions emerged in diverse cultures, illustrating attempts to explain and influence natural forces. These narratives often emphasized cycles of loss and renewal, mirroring the experience of planting seeds that disappear into the ground before returning as sustenance. Through such stories, agriculture became intertwined with belief systems and cosmological understanding. Artistic expression provided another medium through which agricultural life was recorded and interpreted. Pottery, textiles, and architectural elements featured patterns inspired by fields, grains, and domesticated animals. These designs were not merely decorative, they carried meaning, reflecting the importance of cultivation within daily life. Symbols repeated across objects suggest shared values and collective memory, preserved through craftsmanship. Communal gatherings tied to agricultural milestones strengthened social cohesion. Shared meals, coordinated labor, and ceremonial acts created opportunities for cooperation and mutual support. These interactions reinforced the interconnected nature of early societies, where survival depended on both individual effort and collective participation. Written language, in its earliest forms, often emerged alongside agricultural administration. Records of stored grain, land use, and seasonal activity required systems of notation, leading to the development of scripts that could convey complex information. In this way, agriculture contributed not only to material sustenance, but also to intellectual advancement. Through ritual, art, and belief, farming became deeply woven into the human experience. The cycles of the earth provided both nourishment and meaning, shaping how societies understood their place within the natural world. These cultural expressions, rooted in the act of cultivation, reveal the enduring connection between human creativity and the land that sustained it. Beneath the broad expanse of cultivated landscapes, the ingenuity of ancient farmers offers enduring guidance for contemporary agriculture. Practices developed millennia ago reveal a sophisticated understanding of ecology, resource management, and environmental adaptation that remains relevant in addressing today's challenges of climate variability and food security. Terracing, one of the most visible legacies of early cultivation, illustrates a profound awareness of land and water. By sculpting hillsides into stepped fields, ancient communities slowed runoff, prevented soil erosion, and maximized arable space in otherwise difficult terrain. These engineered surfaces captured rainfall efficiently, conserving moisture and maintaining fertility across seasons. Modern sustainable farming continues to draw on this principle, adapting terraces to diverse climates to protect soil and optimize yield. Crop rotation and polyculture were also cornerstones of early farming. Alternating plant families within fields helped maintain soil nutrients and reduced vulnerability to pests and disease. Intercropping combined complementary species, allowing one crop to enrich the soil while another drew nutrients, creating balanced ecosystems. Such techniques minimized reliance on external inputs, demonstrating how careful observation of natural interactions allowed ancient farmers to harmonize production with environmental limits. Irrigation practices, refined over centuries, reveal both innovation and caution. Early canal systems, carefully aligned with topography, brought water to parched fields while minimizing salinization and water loss. Channels were maintained and adjusted according to seasonal patterns, reflecting a long-term perspective that valued soil health and landscape integrity. Present-day water management strategies echo these principles, emphasizing efficiency, resilience, and ecological sensitivity. Seed preservation and selection highlight another enduring lesson. Ancient communities saved the best specimens from each harvest, favoring traits such as drought tolerance, yield, and resistance to pests. Through generations, these practices enhanced genetic diversity and adaptation to local conditions. Modern crop breeding continues this trajectory, yet historical methods remind us of the importance of maintaining resilient varieties suited to specific ecosystems rather than relying solely on uniform high-yield strains. The design of settlements and farm layouts also embodied sustainability. Homes, storage structures, and fields were positioned to maximize natural advantages such as sun exposure, wind protection, and access to water. Labor was organized efficiently, and communal management of shared resources promoted cooperation. These insights into spatial planning and collective stewardship resonate with contemporary efforts to integrate human activity with ecological constraints. Cultural knowledge surrounding agriculture contributed to environmental awareness. Rituals, calendars, and oral traditions transmitted information about seasonal cycles, soil conditions, and weather patterns. This integration of observation, practice, and cultural memory provided a comprehensive framework for sustainable land use, linking ecological understanding with daily life and long-term survival. By studying the innovations of early farmers, it becomes clear that sustainable agriculture is far from a modern invention. Practices developed thousands of years ago, careful conservation of water, rotation, and diversity of crops, and attentive. Management of soil fertility offer timeless strategies that remain relevant for contemporary challenges. These methods reveal a profound understanding of the land, cultivated through careful observation, experimentation, and intergenerational knowledge. Humanity's ongoing relationship with the environment, refined over millennia, shows that long-term survival depended on working in harmony with natural systems, rather than merely extracting from them. From the terraces etched into steep hillsides to the selection of resilient crop varieties adapted to local conditions, the story of ancient agriculture provides a framework for thoughtful cultivation today. These landscapes were shaped not only by necessity, but also by ingenuity and foresight, reflecting a balance between human ambition and ecological constraints. Such lessons underscore the principle that productivity and sustainability are not opposing forces. They are intertwined. The rhythms of planting, harvesting, and managing natural resources created a subtle yet enduring blueprint, one that emphasizes care, adaptability, and respect for the cycles of the earth. The wisdom embedded in these early practices continues to resonate with modern approaches to sustainable farming. Strategies that prioritize soil regeneration, water efficiency, and biodiversity echo the techniques honed by ancient communities. In this light, agriculture emerges as a dialogue between humans and their environment, a continuous exchange shaped by observation, patience, and responsiveness. By appreciating and learning from these enduring landscapes, contemporary farmers and communities can draw inspiration from the past, embracing solutions that honor both human need and ecological balance, ensuring the resilience of the land for generations to come. As our journey through the first fields of human civilization comes to a close, allow yourself to sink even deeper into relaxation. Feel the gentle warmth of sunlight on the soil and the soft murmur of rivers that once carried life across the land. Let the echoes of ancient planting and harvest cycles settle into your mind, a quiet reminder of patience, care, and connection. Feel your thoughts gently fading, your muscles softening, and your breath flowing naturally and effortlessly. Rest here, fully supported in this safe and serene space. If you enjoyed this relaxing moment, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, and turning on all notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos. But for now, let your body relax, release any tension, and allow your mind to drift. Good night and sleep well.